John had asked to have the boys for the Thanksgiving holiday, and he was supposed to return them on Black Friday, November 26, 2010.
Murders, mysteries, unexplained stories, and our family's crazy opinions on them all. Join us now. The Family School of Thought is in session.
Hey everybody, hope everybody's doing good, having a good week. Thanks again for visiting with us. Hope everybody is remembering to share and like our site and hit that like button. It helps us out a great deal. And for sure, give us all your thoughts at the Family School of Thought at gmail.com. Okay, let's get going this week. I know Jesse's in a hurry because she has a son that needs to get to bed. So, Jesse, why don't you start us out with some history facts?
Yes, history, unexplained mysteries. So, on November 22nd, 1987, 2 television stations in Chicago had broadcasts hijacked by an unknown person impersonating the character Max Headroom, an artificial intelligence character that debuted in the early 1980s in the television movie Max Headroom, 20 Minutes into the Future. Both Chicago stations, WGN-TV and WTTW, were interrupted separately within a span of 3 hours. The intruder made references to the television series Clutch Cargo of the 1960s and to news anchors, and even exposed himself while a second intruder smacked him in the butt with a fly swatter.
What?
The incident made national headlines, and the Federal Communications Commission investigated the hijacking, but no one was ever charged with the pirating. They were never able to identify who it was.
Huh.
Yeah, I've heard about this. It's really interesting, actually, because it came and went, and there was no reason to it, and they still can't find out who did it. I think it's so interesting.
Yep.
Huh.
There you go. There's my
interesting. All right.
Unexplained mysteries.
Okay. Only one for us this week?
Only one.
Okay. All right. Cass, that means you are up next.
Oh, and I got a good one this week. And I know we have all heard this song before. This is Jesse's Girl by Rick Springfield.
Yeah.
You've never heard? Are you sure?
Everybody heard that? Yeah.
About this one.
Well, so obviously this is part of a Why Is It Creepy segment.
I'm kind of nervous about hearing this one, I'm telling you.
Well, I mean, this one's pretty straightforward again. Like, it really, if you really think about the lyrics of the song, it's pretty straightforward why it's creepy. This is an entire song about the narrator wanting his best friend's girlfriend and willing to do anything it takes to get her, which means ruining his friendship to be with this girl, which in itself is fairly creepy. But when Rick Springfield has talked about this song later on, he has pointed out that this is a real story and that he had a friend named Gary who had a girlfriend that he wanted really, really badly. But instead of, talking to the girl, he just wrote this song. He admitted in an interview with Oprah that he never talked to this girl. Not once did he ever talk to this girl in the entire time he had a crush on the girl. He just stared at her longingly while she was with his best friend, which, again, stalker vibes. It's really creepy. It's probably why she ended up with Gary and not him.
You guys better watch out. Somebody might be staring at you.
Yeah. But there you go. That's
song. It's a good song, and that is what it's about. I knew that.
Right. It's pretty straightforward, but it's still, whether it's straightforward or not, it's still pretty creepy.
A little creepy.
Still, there is something romantic.
Imagine being that best friend, Gary, during the song.
Right. That's what I think is so creepy, is that, like, this is a real best friend he has, and his friend Gary has to listen to him talk about how he's willing to ruin his best friendship for a girl. Like, ooh. Okay.
Well, anyways. Hey, I was talking to some people at work, and we were talking about, hey there, Delilah.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody was so freaked out. They're like, why? That's romantic that he met this girl and he dreamt of a whole life
Well,
with her.
I think this is. I remember this was like part of an episode of How I Met Your Mother. It's like one of Barney's charts. You know, Barney is a character. If nobody's ever watched it, but he said there is a line that is crossed between if it's creepy or if it's cute. If you're attracted to the person, you find it cute and romantic. If you're not attracted to that person, it's creepy.
Right.
So there's a fine line.
Well, that doesn't even sound very good. So I should be offended if somebody's not attractive, but they.
Well, no.
If you are attracted, so if somebody is like singing the song, like "Hey there, Delilah," to you, they wrote this song for you, but you're not attracted to that person, it's kind of creepy. But if you are attracted, you're like, oh, it's so romantic. Like you wrote a song for me.
Right. Like it's not about like you being mad at them for singing the song. It's about whether or not it comes across the way it should.
Yeah, it could be it's cute or it's creepy, depending on how you feel about that person.
And I've stated this a million times with this song. The creepy part is not always just the song. It's about the like backstory, that the fact is this Delilah was a real girl that he wrote this song about, and she had no idea who he was. And he wrote this top charting song about her, and she has to be like, okay, that's really nice.
Yeah.
Well, probably if I did that, I would probably really never identify the person. You know what I mean?
Right. But he named her straight up. Her real name is Delilah.
I think it is kind of neat. I can see, I mean, I don't write songs. Actually, I do, but for me to like meet somebody at a party and just kind of fantasize about the life I might have with that person and putting it into a song, I don't think anything's weird about that or creepy. Now, if I go to the person and say, hey, I wrote this song, now aren't you going to fall in love with me? That's kind of creepy.
That's kind of creepy, right?
But if I just said, hey, I wrote the song about, or if I wrote the song, it became a hit, and I just said, yeah, it was about this girl I met, and, then nothing ever came about it, but I was just kind of daydreaming of what would happen. I think that's kind of cute and romantic. I don't think anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, maybe Delilah wasn't such a delight if she was so offended by it.
Interesting. So says the man.
Right. Yeah.
I could do 1,000,005 true crime stories about women who have rejected men for lesser reasons and then got murdered. But hey, that's fine.
It's not like it was a rejection.
It wasn't a rejection, but it's still.
But I'm just saying that, like, the creepy factor of what if he had gone to her and been like, well, I wrote this hit song, so you can date me now.
That's different.
So that's the line. That's the line where it's like it's dragging on that line where you got to be like,
no. I think it's romantic and cute.
It's towing the line. It's towing the line.
Hey, let's take it to our listeners. Is it cute? Is it creepy?
There you go. Let us know what you think.
We've got 3 women saying it's creepy and 1 man saying it's not. So
I'll tell you what,
because he's the man.
One of them is a woman that thought it was romantic
until she thought about it.
You did kind of ruin that song for a lot of people.
Sorry.
I still love the song. And my next daughter is going to be called Delilah.
We're not having another daughter.
You never know.
Well, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You've already got 3. I think that's good.
Yeah.
Okie dokie. Who's up, Jesse?
It's me.
Yes.
Let's
hear your story for the week.
So this is a story that is a little close to home. It is about the 3 Skelton brothers who disappeared in November of 2010 from Morenci, Michigan. Do you guys remember this story?
Is there a railroad track involved in it?
What?
Is there a railroad track involved in it?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
I mean, maybe, but I don't think so.
I might know the story.
It was three brothers, very young. And this happened in November 2010. At the time, the brothers were Andrew was 9, Alexander was 7, and Tanner was 12. Or sorry, Tanner was 10. Andrew was 9, Alexander was 7, Tanner was 5. It has been, and this happened in 2010, so it has been just over 12 years since this happened. And we really have not found any new information that leads to the whereabouts of the three brothers.
Where is this?
I think I do remember the story.
I was going to say, I'm surprised you guys don't remember this because it was big news.
Do you remember it?
Yeah, I do remember it. Yeah, I do remember it because and I think maybe once we get into it, you guys might catch on for you guys because this involved the parents were separated. They weren't fully divorced yet when this happened, but the mom had allowed the three boys to go to the dad's house for Thanksgiving, and her only requirement was, because she had full custody of the boys, her only requirement was that she wanted them to be dropped off or picked up, back in her custody by Friday morning so that she could go out and go Black Friday shopping with them. And they never came home. So
what happened to the dad?
Well, that's part of the mystery of this story. So their father asked to have them. The father's name is John. Yeah, John Skelton. Mom's name is Tanya, and she goes by, I'm assuming, her maiden name now. It's Zuver. I think it's how you say it. Zuvers. John had asked to have the boys for the Thanksgiving holiday during their divorce proceedings, and they were in a custody battle. And he was supposed to return them on Black Friday, November 26, 2010. They went to stay with him on the day before Thanksgiving, so Wednesday, the day before. And they were seen outside in the backyard playing. And then it was Thanksgiving Day was the last time a neighbor had saw them outside playing in their backyard. And that was the last time that they were seen. Was on Thanksgiving Day. And nobody knows what happened. That's where the mystery really kind of comes about, is because between Thursday, November 25th, and Friday, November 26th at 4:30 a.m. there's a time period of nobody really knows what happened, and what happened with the boys. So the boys on Thanksgiving Day, the dad went to the ER for a broken ankle, and he told the emergency room that he attempted suicide by hanging and fell and broke his ankle. And when he was in the ER, he said he had three boys. They were at home, but they were safe. He didn't want them coming into the hospital with him. And so he said he had young boys, so they went to check up on the boys. The police came and found nobody at the house, but the house had been kind of ransacked a little bit. It looked like there was just things thrown around. And so then he was questioned again on, where are the boys? And he said, well, I sent them to a neighbor. Her name was Joanne. I forget her last name, but her name was Joanne. And so they started looking to find out who this Joanne person was. Come to find out, there's nobody by that name that lives in the neighborhood. They couldn't find any information on this Joanne person at all. And so then he later said, well, I gave them to this woman. I don't know what her name is, but she's an Amish woman. That's an underground Amish community, because I wanted them to be safe. I didn't want them to be home while I was committing suicide. I wanted them to be safe. So the mom, Tanya, had gotten worried about the boys because she all of a sudden, like on Thanksgiving Day, was no longer receiving any communication back from John. And so she got worried, and she went over to the house and tried to see if she could find them on her own. And nobody was at the house because he was at the hospital at the time. And so she immediately called the cops and put in a missing person report for her 3 sons, because the reason that they were getting a divorce was because in September, so a couple months before their disappearance, their dad, John, had taken all 3 of the boys, got them out early from school, and took them down to Florida where his parents lived, without informing mom, Tanya. And so the school, she only knew because the school had called and said, hey, John came and picked up the boys early today. They said that they were going on a vacation down to Florida, so have fun on your trip, kind of thing. But we just want to let you know that they've been picked up already. And so she, called the cops on him because he did not have her consent to take the kids out of state. And she was worried about it. And so she kind of let it go, let that happen again. But then a month later, a few weeks later, he took the 2 older boys to Florida again without her consent. And it was at that time that she said, nope, we're getting a divorce. And she filed for, full custody, and was trying to, finalize everything with that, because he obviously wasn't, he was trying to get these boys out of the state without her consent and, without her knowing about it, but she kept finding out. And so she kind of had the last straw. She said she was going to get a divorce, but he had been, on good behavior. So on Thanksgiving, she thought it would be okay to let them stay with him for a couple nights and then, be there and pick them up on Friday. But John's story continuously changed every time he talked to somebody, and the cops that were investigating this still to this day believe that he has knowledge of where the boys are, or what happened to them, and is just not sharing that information. And some of it is they think that it's due to he just was upset that she was divorcing him and was trying to get full custody of them. But that's something that the police, the head detective, the Lieutenant Jeremy Brewer, has said that there's every so often that they'll get a tip in these last 12 years, they'll get a tip that makes a lot of sense to them. But when they're throwing all the resources at this, but they can't get the dots to connect. And so there's been tips that they've went through every year. There's, information about a blue Dodge Caravan that was around the area where the dad was, but it's just nothing is connecting. And that is something too that the police, once they started investigating this, found out the neighbors last saw the boys again on Thanksgiving out in the backyard. But Dad's phone was on Friday, November 26th at 4:30 in the morning. His cell phone was pinged in Morenci, but he was driving southwest out of town. And then at 5 a.m., his phone pinged again, but it was in Holiday City, Ohio, just over the border between Michigan and Ohio. And granted, Morenci is a border city, so this was only about 20 miles, 20-minute drive. So it wasn't too far, but his phone was shown to be shut off, and it didn't turn back on until 6:45, where it pinged that he was back at his house. So there's, an hour and 45 minutes of where was he? What was he doing? Why was he in Ohio? But and that's where nobody knows what happened in that 75-minute gap of time between when his phone pinged in Holiday City and when he returned back home. So that's where there's been a lot of books and movies, or not movies, documentaries that have kind of covered this, but that's what they really kind of work on is like what happened during this time. And they'd have gotten tips from people in Ohio saying that they saw like that blue Dodge Caravan near Holiday City, you know, and near this location. They've looked in those, but they can't find any actual evidence after those leads have been given to them. So they're still kind of like, they just don't know what happened. But John Skelton has said that he, like I said, gave the boys to the underground group, Amish group, to protect them from their mother, because she has a felony charge against her, like an old one. And I tried to find out how old she is, because this is one that is kind of concerning. But I do think that in the investigation, like nothing's really come forward with this whole missing thing. Like she's never been considered a suspect of anything, but she was charged in 1998 of 4th degree criminal conduct for having sex with a 14-year-old. So
Wow.
I think she's around like 44 though.
And she was convicted of this.
Yeah, well, so she was charged with it. So
And who was this lady to him?
this was his ex-wife. It was the 3 boys. This is their mother. So he was saying that he gave the boys to a lady that was part of the underground Amish community to protect them, because he's told the cops that she was sexually abusing the boys, which she has denied. There's been no evidence of that at all. You know, she's just saying he's pointing his finger to trying to make her look bad in this situation because but I'm thinking though too, so if she's 40, like kind of doing the math, if she's 44 now, 1998, she would have been, I guess at the, like 16-ish, like, I don't know, like that's something too, where like, I don't think it would be that big of a difference. I mean, she may have been 18 at the time with a 14-year-old, which it is worrisome, but also like high school age.
This don't add up here.
Yeah, that doesn't add up.
Well, I don't know how old. That's why I tried looking to see how old she was. I couldn't find
She's
anywhere.
44 now, or she's 44. She was 44 when the boys disappeared.
She's 44 now. I think she's 44 now. So like 2023, 44, that puts her as 1979.
That put her 32 12 years ago.
She would have been if she's 44
but
now.
She was charged in 1990. She was charged in 1999 or 1998.
1998, yeah. So she would have been 19 at that time. So I'm thinking when 14-year-old boy, she was like 18, 19 when it happened. So it could have been she was a senior, he was a freshman, that kind of a situation.
Wow.
Still gross, but like
it's still gross, but it's like I think the dad was blowing it out of proportion to make her look bad. Hey, she's got this felony charge, and I think that's why it's 4th degree, because it's more of like the Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
Now too, so
well, it's not hard to happen. It did happen here in our state.
I know, but that's what. So, anyways,
this is a case from our state. So,
but the whole point.
It'd be different if it was 16 and 18.
This is, I think, what his whole point was.
14, no.
Yes. You see how distracted you guys got from that one little fact?
I know.
That was his whole, I think, in my opinion, this is entertainment purposes only. That was, in my opinion, that was his goal, was to throw out this fact, and then everybody just globs to that one fact and goes crazy over that one fact and argues and debates it, and then forgets about everything else.
I agree, because that is like the second you said that she had this charge, it was like, whoa.
Yeah, exactly.
But then when you think about it, you're like, oh, I guess. Like,
and then, and then he claimed that she was abusing her sons, but she denied it. And then she was investigated and they had no evidence on it. So, like there's nothing that, I think what happened, it was just like a high school thing, like I don't think it was that big of a, it's a big deal, but I don't think it should have been blown out of proportion as like what just happened,
Right.
But the Lieutenant Brewer he said in 2020, at the 10-year anniversary that he fully believes that John Skelton is holding back key information to this case.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that he knows
Oh, yeah.
exactly what happens. And he is quoted as saying, "This is not a case of everyone hates John Skelton. We just want to find these boys." So I think it's one of those things, because Morenci is a small town. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody, is friends with everybody. But that's something too, is that they know he's not telling the full truth on this. So, but September 15th of 2011, John Skelton pleaded no contest to 3 counts of unlawful imprisonment of the 3 boys. So they couldn't confirm, they had no evidence against him that he murdered his sons, or, like gave them to, the underground Amish, they couldn't confirm and, provide proof of evidence that he actually had a hand in that. So he was charged with kidnapping of his own kids, and then unlawful imprisonment. And so in 2011, he was convicted and sentenced to unlawful imprisonment of the 3 boys, and was sentenced to 10 to 15 years in prison. So he was denied. He was up for parole in 2020, and then again in I think August 22. So just within the last 6 months, and he was denied parole both times. He will be able to apply this year for parole again, but I couldn't find what month of this year. So I'm assuming probably August, September again, sometime. But he is currently serving his sentence for the imprisonment, the unlawful imprisonment of this, because that's all they really could convict him of with this, because there really has been no concrete evidence that has ever been surfaced on what happened with this. So there was an Amber Alert put out shortly after. Once Tanya called the police, the Morenci police, they put out an Amber Alert pretty quickly, which, if people don't know, Amber Alerts only go out for minor children if there's a fear of endangerment of anybody, like any other people, or of those children. There's specific criteria that has to be made. But because John had taken the boys out of state twice within the recent months without her consent, they considered that an endangerment, those acts and his previous behavior an endangerment because of that erratic behavior. So that's when they, they knew they had to have been with their dad, but they just couldn't figure out where they were, he just kept changing his story, and he refused to provide really any details or explain himself more than he gave the kids to a lady that he didn't know. And that's kind of where his last story, what he is saying, that's where it kind of left off, is that he gave it to this unknown person. He didn't know who she was, but he gave it and said that it was an Amish person. And I think there was an Amish community in the area, and the police investigated and kind of talked with them, and just to kind of rule out that. And the Amish people, or that Amish community has gone on the record stating, we don't have TV, we don't, they don't use electricity, but they don't have any information on these 3 boys. They don't know where they are. They don't know anybody in their community that, took them from the dad. Because the Amish community is very a close-knit community, they would know, just because they don't hear things on the TV, they would know if something like this was going on. Right. And even if that did happen, there's no way that they would hide these 3 boys from the public after, with this big news story going on. So they basically kind of said hey, we don't want to be involved with this. We want to brush ourselves away from this. So, and I kind of remember something where there was something about the boys being buried in a tree, a hollowed out tree, but I couldn't find anything. So I can't remember if I'm mixing that up with another story with something else, but that's something that like I feel like we kind of remember. But
Well, does he have any family members?
his parents live in Florida.
Right,
So,
but brothers or sisters or
no, I don't think so. I mean, nothing that has been like put into.
I'm thinking he's sent them with a family and they're out
Well,
of
and that's
the
something,
country.
and so I think the police have kind of like went down that road and tried to figure it out. But I think in like 2017, 18, there were remains of 3 children that were discovered in a shed in Montana. And back then it was like highly thought of, like everybody's like, oh, we got the boys. This is where they are. You know, they're dead. They were buried in the shed, but they did DNA testing on those skeletons and they were not the skeletons. They did DNA testing on the children remains that they found in Montana, and it was not the skeleton brothers. And the, you know, like the forensics team kind of aged the skeletons at, you know, like I think it was like 2, 5, and 7. So it's like they were just too young for the boys, you know,
Well,
like
that
kind of in the
means
same
there's another
age group.
story like this out there too.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. So, but yeah, and then it was in 2019 when an Ohio woman came forward and saying that she saw John in that Dodge Caravan on Thanksgiving, and that's where they kind of pulled those strings. But again, that was almost 10 years later. That was 9 years later. So that's where, you know, like it's just things, they're getting good tips. It's just nothing is connecting. So it's like they just can't tie those loose ends with that. And I think some of it too is like they know it's like that one, the last piece of the puzzle is being kept with John, and now he's refusing to talk to the news. He's refusing to talk to the police. He's not talking to anybody anymore from this. So to me, I feel like I don't know, like he either, you know, especially if he was attempting to kill himself, then, you know, like most likely, you know, because of the situation, would he have done a murder suicide where he murdered the 3 boys? Or, you know, did he sell them on the black market, you know, like, or, you know, sell them into a sex slave thing, you know, a sex ring, you know, those are things that, you know, that maybe they're still alive, but like nobody knows if they're alive. Nobody knows if they're dead. But it's kind of, to me, I thought it was odd too, where why would you go to the ER for a broken ankle because you attempted suicide? Like if you were attempting suicide and you fell and broke your ankle, wouldn't you just try to attempt suicide again? Like, why are you concerned about your broken ankle? But
well, that was his alibi because then he could make his kids disappear somehow. Somebody picked those kids up or he took them somewhere.
Yeah. So I don't know, you know, and that's something too where, you know, none of the boys ever like reported to school or like any adults or anything that they were being abused at home or anything where it shined any kind of like suspicious light on the mom. But really it's like the dad had some really erratic behavior leading up to this, because it was literally like September. Let me get back to the timeline. September of 2010, that's when she filed for divorce because he took the boys to Florida without her permission with that. And she, you know, like she was able to convince him to come back, but she, you know, and then she filed for divorce, and then he took the 2 oldest ones back to Florida without her consent, which to me, I mean, I guess I don't understand how like with custody issues and the courts work, but like if you're in the middle of a divorce and custody battle and one of the parents takes the kids out of state without consent, wouldn't that revoke your ability to even have custody of your kid at all? And wouldn't you like be in trouble with the law? Right. You wouldn't you?
Yeah,
So, but
like
I don't know, maybe because she didn't, you know, like she would have had to press charges or something.
Press charges. Yeah.
So I don't know enough about that kind of stuff, and I couldn't really find anything. But
I do know if you're in the middle of a divorce and you cannot take a child across state lines without
right.
consent from the other parent. You know.
Yeah.
And I just know that.
But that's
one time we gave a bunch of people a free trip to the Bahamas, and one of them was going through a divorce. You could take somebody. So she took her daughter, and she was in the middle of a divorce, and she couldn't even get on the plane. She had to leave everybody behind because because
I think you can. I mean, I just think you have to have permission.
Consent. You have to have consent of that.
And he probably didn't take a plane either. He probably drove.
Right.
But
I don't know.
I got about 1,000 questions on this one.
So, but for our listeners, there is still, I think there's still a reward out. I saw there is it's a website that like the skeletonbrothers.com or something like that. I'll have to get to it. But on that website, it does say that there's a reward for $60,000 if they can, provide information for where the brothers are, and that information. They've continuously done age progression photos of all three of the boys. Today, Tanner, who was 5 at the time, would be 17. Alexander would be 19. Andrew would be 21. But they do have, this has been now, so Morenci Police has turned it over to Michigan State Police. So if anybody has any information, it's a cold case, but they're still trying to figure out what happened. So police are asking anybody with any information to call. I don't know if we should give out the number or not, but they do have phone numbers listed for the Michigan State Police for a tip line, and then the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children, which that one I feel okay to give out because that is with Adam Walsh. That's the original kind of big case, but that's 1-800 the lost. So it's 1-800-843-5678. So they are also investigating this too, which, so there's, they just, nobody really knows. I read some stories. Some of them are really old. This is a 12-year-old case now, but some of them are kind of older, with the mom, Tanya, still is holding out hope that the 3 boys are alive. But I did see somewhere else too, where she says, you have to be realistic. And she, hopes that they're alive, but there's, a realistic possibility that they're no longer alive for that too. So.
Well, is Grandma and Grandpa still alive down in Florida?
I don't know that. I don't know if, I'm assuming, with any missing case, especially in this situation, that all family members were interviewed and ruled out, and, because that's something too. And I feel like when this first happened in 2010, that was something too, where did the dad ship them out to Florida on a red eye by themselves, because you can send minor kids on a plane by themselves. So that would be a question too on, did he send them to them? I think that was ruled out pretty quickly though, so who knows, but
I know, but I just don't how do you know that the Grandma and Grandpa didn't drive up?
I'm thinking,
and then hide them somewhere.
Okay, well, let's put it in this kind of situation. If Matt and I were, in the middle of a divorce and a custody battle, and I said, hey, take Odin and hide him from the world, would you be okay with that? Would you ethically and morally be okay with that? And I'm arrested for endangerment and kidnapping my own kid.
No, let me take that back. If my children were being molested,
right? Well, that's not the case.
I could see myself taking them, hiding them. I'm not going to trust the judicial system to correct this or prove.
But I don't think that was the case, because again, I don't think that they were being sexually molested at all. I think the dad was trying to use that angle so that people concentrated on her past felony charge that happened. I'm just saying
it is possible that was happening. That is a possibility.
Sure, it's a possibility.
Decided, I'm not contacting the attorneys. I'm not calling the police. I'm just getting them out of there because I don't trust.
But that's not the right way to do it either.
Well, I know, but I understand that. But what I was getting at is the dad probably really didn't think that he would be in jail this long. He probably thought that he'd be able to get out.
I don't think so on that one. I think that the mom made a stake when she was like a teenager, and the
No, I know, but I
boy's
mean,
family probably said, "Hey, this is what's
you know
going
what,
on. We're going to
think
press
before I
charges."
really had a real opinion of it, I'd
because
have
he
to
tried
look
to get
into
him twice
that
and
case
ship
of
him to
her and the
Florida.
14-year-old. I mean, what is
Yeah,
that
I mean,
about?
to
That
me,
could mean a lot of things.
sure, but to me, I think trying to take your kids out of state without the consent of the other parent that you're married to or in the divorce, like that's a bigger deal than something that happened, like 20 years, or like, I guess, yeah, it was like
Well,
20 years.
And you have to think about the fact that
Or
she
10
was
years.
awarded full custody. So in a court
Yeah.
of law, they saw all of her charges and
Yeah.
still gave her full
custody.
custody.
Right.
So somewhere
Well,
like that, somewhere along the line, that like that people knew that the father was not capable of taking care of these children, and that the mom was, whether or not she had this charge on her file anyway. Like it was there when she did when the separation was going through. So
He was awarded, or she was awarded.
she
full
was
custody.
Yeah, she
awarded
was
full custody.
And see, I understand that. That's what I'm saying. That the father, I think that he knows whether they're alive or
Oh,
not. I think he knows
yeah.
where they're at.
He knows.
See, and that's what,
That's what I'm
and
trying
that
to
might
say.
be why
I
he's not
think he think-
talking or saying anything.
I think that they're still alive somewhere, and he thought that he'd be out of prison to spend the life with them. And somebody's got those three boys. Somebody's raising those boys for him.
Has anybody like really looked into like whether or not he had any like outstanding debts or anything like that? Like, could he have like lost the children?
Right, and that's what, like, like, did he sell them on the black market because he
Right.
had, like, did he, so I don't know, and that's something like I really looked into a lot of this, and a lot of the stories, it's more just the local news stories. There's not even a Wikipedia page on this, which I found kind of crazy. So, but I did find, so the grandparents live in Jacksonville, or they did at the time. So this story is from 2010, but the grandmother, Roxanne Skelton, she was 60 back in 2010, so she'd be 72 now, said that she told the newspaper she believes that an unknown person has the boys and hopefully they will return the boys. So I think his parents really didn't know what, or at least they're telling the public that they didn't know anything what was going on either. So I don't know.
I don't know that I believe that they weren't. Maybe they weren't in on it, but I bet you they know the story.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially because he was trying to get them to go down there twice.
Right.
So they knew that they were coming. The grandparents knew because the son had tried to do it twice. So there's something sneaky about it.
Like,
and I really think that he's got somebody watching them, and they're probably out of the country, so nobody can find them.
Maybe.
Well, I definitely remember
when they found and does he write letters while he's in prison? I mean, the prison.
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't talk to anybody, and he's in what prison? He's up in Ionia, I think. He's let me see if I can find it again.
I don't know.
Yeah, he's up in a prison in Ionia, but I can't remember what it's called. I'm
sorry, I think I might have missed it, but how long is he going to be in jail for? Like how long?
It was his sentence was 10 to like it just said 10 to 15 years, and he was up for parole in 2020 and then again in 2022, and both times he was denied. And I think he can apply for parole this year. But it doesn't like say when, so I think it's going to be around like August, September of this year he'd be able to apply for parole again.
But no matter what, he's going to be out in 2025.
At the very latest, 2025. Yeah. So, and then, okay, so he's being held at Bellamy Creek Correctional Facility in Ionia. So, and, so, and I think, obviously the mom doesn't want him to ever get his parole, to
Right.
serve his time. But, we're coming up. It's, 15 years doesn't seem like that long for what's going on. But maybe that's something too where in a few more years when he does get out, we find out what happens. Because like you said, maybe he did give them to what he says is an unknown person, but maybe it was somebody that he knew and he got them out of the country or whatever. And we'll kind of find out as soon as he is out. But
I wonder if they're still alive and if he had anything to do with it. Like if they're in Canada.
well, and that's that could be the case too, but that's something
Because
to
it's so easy to smuggle somebody into Canada from Michigan.
So like with his cell phone pinging in Ohio, he could have dropped him off in Ohio with somebody, and then got them out of there from there. I don't know, but I also think too, like, I don't know, this isn't like, I feel like it was national news back in 2010, but it really hasn't been broadcast too much since then. But you would think as like boys, especially the older one, he was 9 at the time, like you would think like, oh, what happened to my mom, but I also think some of it is like kids are so impressionable, especially at that age, that if you're told like, hey, we got you away from your mom because she was abusive, they start to believe,
Right.
they're brainwashed and start to believe it.
Right.
But
And if they're with a group of people that don't watch the news, that aren't involved in anything going on in the world, they could be living there and they probably have been told some horrific story of why they're not with their mother.
Right.
And they would hide them. They would hide people.
Right. Oh, I'm sure. Right.
Because it's them against the world type of situation.
Yeah.
So they would hide people.
Yeah.
So who knows? They could possibly be living with an Amish or some type of group like that.
Right. Well, and that's the thing too, is like the Amish community, there are very strict, like there's different levels of Amish or different Amish communities that, like some Amish people do drive cars. Some don't, so I think it just depends. I don't know if they're all called Amish. That could just be a broad term that we're using incorrectly, but
right. You're right. We are because there's Mennonite.
Yeah, we are. There is a word. Yeah.
Right.
So,
but in the news stories, they all said it was Amish, like an Amish community. So,
which are very prevalent in Michigan. Like that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like there's a lot of Amish communities in Michigan.
Even if he's not right, he maybe have convinced himself of that.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I think so. Right. Well, and that's another thing I was going to say about his parents who live in Florida. Like, how easy will it be to like convince your parents that your ex-wife is abusing your grandchildren?
Right. Yeah, and then I also think too, because the kids were so young.
The 14-year-old thing, I don't think that should be taken so lightly.
I'm not saying take it lightly. I'm just saying it was a red herring. Like it's something that he's basically shining a light on to get away from his own.
Yeah, he wasted time investigating that for the police to investigate that. And I think they did their due diligence to kind of get to the bottom of it and figure it out and stuff. But I think it was a tool that he used to get it off of him.
And you have to think about like in 1998, that kind of like if she was 19 and he was 14, like it's gross. It is. And unfortunately, if it was a man and like if the girl was 14 and the guy was 19, we wouldn't think it's so crazy. But it is so.
I went to high school with kids that were 14 dating 18, 19-year-olds too, and
20-year-olds. Nobody better than I. And so we wouldn't think anything of.
Who married when she was 20, married a 73-year-old.
Yeah, exactly.
But you know what? That turned out well, didn't it?
It did. It turned out very well.
Yes.
So, wow.
So that's what we're saying is like
I don't think she was 20.
It's not right, and it's still gross. But at the same time, like you have to think about when you first hear it. Like when I first heard it, and Jesse saying she's 44, I'm thinking she was like 30 at the time when she got this conviction with a 14-year-old. But it's different when it's 19.
Yeah,
it is.
And 1998 was not 10 years ago.
No.
So it was
30.
It was more than 20 years ago. It was 25 years ago. Because we're in 2023. It was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So it is not. We're not saying it's okay or we should take it lightly, but it's probably nothing to do with these children.
Yeah, and that's what I think too. It was never anything to do with the boys going missing.
Oh no, I don't think so either.
Anything on that end.
I think he lost custody and was upset that he lost custody and did what he needed to do to get his boys.
Yeah, right. And we'll never know if they're alive or not, because even if he does get out of prison, if they're out of the country, he's going to go wherever they're at. So if he leaves the country,
I think he's going to be followed. Hopefully he's going to be followed.
I would think so too. Yeah. Like,
well, I'm hoping so too.
Because when you get out of prison, you just can't like up and leave the country. Either.
Right.
So
you're on parole. What?
I didn't hear what you said.
But you can if you're Charles Manson.
He didn't leave the country.
Well, he got out of parole early, so
going over the border with an ID. You know, how do they know that he's been in prison? You know,
that was also the 60s.
You can go to Canada with a passport.
Okay. Yes, but he's not going to have a passport. You can't have a passport. As a convicted felon, you cannot have a passport.
That's why you have passports and stuff.
Let me ask you this. So if he gets out of prison in 2025 and he goes and gets these boys wherever they're at, is there any legal things that can happen to him at that point?
I don't know, because that could, because what would
now
they charge him
with?
Right. Well, and that's the thing, though, too, is like, what would they charge him with then? You can't, like, charge him for kidnapping and like imprisonment again, because he already served his time for that.
That's true.
Served his time.
That's
They're
true.
Adults now,
so they can't recharge him for that crime.
But like, what kind of relationship is he really going to have with these boys after 15 years?
Probably a very good one if he convinces them that I would give up 15 years of my life to protect you.
Maybe.
And whoever they're with, who knows what they're telling them? Like,
well, the thing though too is like, if he is writing letters or talking to them, he may not be using their names, but he's there's like code names,
But still, like those letters it's not like those letters aren't going to be tracked.
Whoever they're with could be said, just feeding them this story that your dad is going to come get you. In 2025, and they're probably excited to see him.
But I also think, Cassie, I get what you're saying, but you could easily track, or like you could kind of get around that with like, hey, I'm in prison. I'm going to mail this letter to mom and dad, and then mom and dad are going to mail that letter to wherever, and then mail that letter to wherever, so it's like a train of going,
but still,
for like a group of people. But
that if that's true, like if that's what's happening, not that I really have that much faith in our judicial system, but like, there's got to be like, the whole point is that these boys are missing and that they're literally like on every on every like kidnapped kid list. Like, there's got to be some kind of tracking. Like, even if he sends a letter to his parents, I'd be watching the parents to like where that letter goes. Like at that point, if this is getting done and this is getting away with, who's even searching for the kids? Like, that's such an easy route to follow.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's why have they not gotten a psychic involved?
I don't know, but this is why this is a mystery. This one is a story that has.
It's a good one. I didn't know about this one.
Well,
yeah, I remember it, and I remember when they found the 3 boys in a shed or something, and they were thinking that's who these were, that he had killed them, but.
I want to say, like, I don't know why I remember something about the boys being put in a tree. Like, he killed them and put them in a tree, and they went and looked at the tree, and like there was nothing there. And then he changed his story again. Like, I feel like that was something, but I couldn't find anything like that. So I must be misremembering, because I feel like it was Joanne Taylor. He said that he gave them to like a neighbor named Joanne Taylor. And when they couldn't find anything about her, it was like, okay, well, yeah, I killed him and I put him in this tree. you know, and they could, and then it was the, you know, he gave him to an unknown Amish lady, you know, kind of thing. So I don't know, which I feel like that's the story that he's kind of stuck with, is that he gave him to an unknown lady from the underground Amish community. But as a mother, you know, like, I wouldn't give my child to an unknown person. You know, like, that seems weird. You know, like, I don't know who you are. I don't know your name. Like, oh, but here, you got my kid.
Desperate.
Protect my kid.
If you are desperate to get your kids away from something,
Yeah.
I don't think I would even do that either. I think I'd be smarter about it. And, you know, like,
you know what? I will say this. If I found out that my kids were being molested,
I'd find a way to like prove it.
Yeah.
I probably would give some serious thought anyhow. Maybe I wouldn't do it, but would really seriously think, I'm not letting the judicial system solve this, because we know how much they have messed up every other case. There's no way I'm going to just sit back and think, well, they're going to take care of this. I'm taking care of it. You know
Okay,
what I mean?
well,
but then you find proof.
Right.
Yeah, like you find proof, or like, I don't know, get rid of the person who's molesting the kids. Like, why would you willingly lose 15 years of having the kids in your life while the like abuser is still out and about? Like, if I'm going to lose 15 years, I'm going to lose 15 years for getting them out of the situation.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to just let them disappear for 15 years.
If I went to jail for 15 years, I'm doing whatever I do need to get
but
them
that's
out of the
I don't think it's a real. I don't think his claims of her being abused. Like,
yeah, I don't believe it either.
Because that's something too. Like, if that's what I thought, like, if I thought, you know, like, Odin was being sexual, guess what? I'm going to be filing every report possible to say that, and I'm going to make it look like that person is a really crappy person, and I'm going to make them look bad. And then it's a small community, people talk, people gossip. I'm going to create a bad character for them, and people will start to believe it, create a good character for myself, and then people are going to feel sorry for you. You're going to play the victim. Like, I could play the victim, and then the other person is looked at as the, you know, the predator.
You certainly know.
Like, even if you have to come up with evidence to like create evidence.
Yeah, just like be smart about it. You know?
You certainly know enough cases where kids that were being abused were left with their abuser time and time again, because
but not when they have
when they have proof.
Right, not when they have proof, or they have a parent willing to take care of it. Like, if most of those cases, it's like the only parent or guardian that these kids have, and it's, you know, it is what it is. But with this, like, this is a parent who could have gone through it the legal way first, and then if that didn't work, do this. Like, he made no effort to do this the legal way.
Right.
We really don't know.
We do know, though, because we have the court cases. Yeah. There would be court cases. There would be appeals of
police reports. There would be anything.
Well, like, one of my friends is going through a custody battle right now, and like, they have to go to court like every couple months to like talk about why they want full custody.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to actually like go in and fight for that. You can't just be like, all right, I want full custody today.
Mm-hmm.
Even when the parent is like not a good fit or abusive, like, you have to go in there and try.
Mm-hmm.
You have to like get a lawyer and do the due process.
Well, I mean, I could bring up some specific cases, but I don't have faith in the judicial system to take care of these kind of things, because there's a lot.
So you would rather just ship your kids off with someone you don't know, who could possibly then sell your kids to the black market,
or, you know, sexually abuse them, or
that,
you know,
like who knows that they're not getting sexually abused now?
Yeah. Who knows that they weren't sold into the sex market, and now they're, you know, living somewhere else as sex slaves, and they're chained up in a dungeon.
Yeah.
You never know. I think I would rather have a record put on there, because then when it comes down to it, there's proof.
Yeah.
Record all your evidence.
Especially with this, like, yes, it's not like a national known case, But even for it just to be a Michigan known case, like I would want to be able to go on the news and be like, look at, I filed this appeal, I did this,
Yeah.
and I told people she was an abuser.
Right. And record conversations and do
It
that.
was
If
a
you're
national
really concerned
news.
about it.
It was national news.
That's why I said it was in 2010 when it first happened. It was national news, but I think it's kind of burnt out since then. You know, like every other story. You know, give it another. Give it a couple days,
have
and then
social
people
media
forget.
back then, and that's what makes a lot of these
They
stories.
did have social media back then. It just wasn't as
Not
big as it is now.
But also, like, unfortunately,
I've had Facebook since 2005. Okay.
Okay.
MySpace before
unfortunately, kids going missing is a daily occurrence. Yeah. So something like this, even with it being such a kind of crazy case, it will fall through the cracks.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I don't know. We may never find out, or give it a couple years. Maybe we can roundtable this again in to 2025 and find out if we know anymore.
A couple more years, that guy will probably be running for president, and half the country will be in support of him.
Probably.
Oh, so now you're in support of it.
It sounds like it.
I know. You've been fighting for him the whole time. I don't know. It's crazy, though. I don't remember this story at all. And this was like right when I was in high school.
2010. Yeah, you would have been in high school, so I don't know.
But you got to remember, like, I was in high school where I was doing, like, part of the news broadcast team.
Yeah, I guess.
And the digital media arts team. Like, this would probably be a story I would have talked about.
You were literally doing the news.
You were on the radio station at this time.
I was a broadcasting station.
Yeah, I know.
You probably actually did a story on it. But you just
I'm sure I did. I just don't remember it. Yeah. There's, like, no way I didn't do a story about it. I had to fit it in between, corn reports and bail.
And polkas.
And polka music.
And the polkas. I don't know. It's a sad situation. Anytime kids are involved, it's sad, but to not know. But there's so many unknown kids all over the world where they're at.
Missing.
Yeah. Yep. Missing. But I just think it's pretty sneaky that he tried to kidnap him twice.
Yeah.
And now
he's not
he's not cooperating whatsoever anymore. So I agree with the cops. I do think that he knows what
he's
happened.
hiding something.
Either that he murdered them or whatever. But I also think too, like I said, with him going to the hospital because he broke his ankle, I don't know how that happened. Like there was no real details on what happened with his ankle, but I think his claims of
if he did try to kill himself, they would have had evidence in his home.
Well, he tried to hang himself, so he would have had evidence on his neck, lacerations or bruising on his neck, but none of that was, at least in the reports, none of that was there. But
so that's
I think it was a lie. I think he was just using it as an excuse, and like you said, he was trying to be at the hospital at the ER at the time when the kids went missing to give himself an alibi, but really it kind of shot himself in the foot because you're in charge of 3 kids under 10 and you went to the hospital by yourself.
Right.
Like if you broke your, foot or your ankle,
you take them with you.
Kids with you, or call the mom and say, "Hey, I had an accident. You need to come get the kids down."
Right. But he said in his statement that he didn't want them to see him, so he had already shipped those kids out.
Right, and that's what
he's. When the neighbor seen those kids out in the yard,
well, they saw him the day before,
and said that was the last time they'd seen him. So somehow in the middle of the night, they came up missing.
Yeah, right.
So I think it was part of the plan. But for purposes, for entertainment purposes only. That's my opinion.
I think there was a theory back in 2010, if I remember correctly, too, where he did hand them off to some unknown person, and so he really doesn't know where they are, what happened to them. He just knows that he, gave them to some random person, and never saw him again. But I don't know.
And
So,
maybe somebody
maybe
looking
he
to
doesn't.
adopt, or somebody that,
Right. So
I don't know.
who
I
knows?
think he knows where they're at. That's,
There's all kinds of theories on, what happened, and him having them out somewhere and they're still alive, but it just seems like, who knows, and maybe one day when they're, in a couple years, they'll kind of realize, hey, I don't remember, or I remember little bits and pieces of my childhood and was told this about my mom. Maybe I am this kid. So.
And nobody has kept track of her over the years of what she's doing now. I mean,
I couldn't find anything in the report really. So, but, and like I said, like there's not like, it's just like local news stories. There's like a couple, like I found a couple like podcasts about this, and there's like some documentaries. There's a book. There's a book called 76 Minutes, My Search for Andrew, Alexander, and Tanner. What is that book? It's on Amazon. Who is it by? Mr. Lynn Thompson. Mr. Lynn Thompson and Mr. Donald Allison. It looks like maybe a couple other people, but so there's like that book, but I think it's like local people that are friends with the family, or like kind of know of the family, do this. And then I think there's a documentary with John Walsh who kind of covered this as well, who's the father of Adam Walsh, which is why we have Coda Adams, those kind of situations.
right.
But it's like I couldn't find. Trying to find there's nothing that I guess, yeah, so Real Life Nightmare. I haven't seen or read any of this stuff, so I don't know how well it is, but Real Life Nightmare is like a movie or a documentary or a docuseries, maybe for that. But there's nothing that there's not a Wikipedia page. There's not anything that kind of like condenses all the information into one site. So I don't know. But like I said, now I can't find it anymore. There was a website that it looks like it was put together by a family member or like towns people, that like a local community. And it was, there it is, skeletonbrothers.org. But it's like, it looks like it's not been updated for a few years. It's kind of an older looking website, but it just gives personal information about the boys. Even like it just gives, goes into personal information on each of the boys, how their, personalities were, what they like to do, activities. And it shows a lot of pictures of each of them, the last school pictures that they each had. There is a reward up for $60,000, but it still does have Morenci Police as the contact there. And like I said, it has since been transferred over to the Michigan State Police. So, but they were all involved in sports, and they liked to have spaghetti tacos, which I don't really know what that is, but it says on the site that they saw it on a show. So Tanya made it for them, and that was one of their favorite things. Spaghetti tacos.
It's pretty cut and dry. You put spaghetti in a taco. It's not, you get it. It's like it isn't a show. I'm pretty sure it's iCarly.
I don't know. Maybe.
But they literally have like hard shell tacos, and they just put spaghetti in them.
No, thank you, but whatever. Oh. Yep. So, yeah, that's all I have for that. So,
That was a
People
good
want
one.
to look into it. If you Google Skeleton Brothers, they're like all the local news stories come up, so you can kind of skim through there. I did see one that from like the Daily Mail, so it looks like it made like worldwide news at one point, But
I looked it up and it showed the what they'd look like today. And
yeah, they have the progression photos, but
yeah, you should
like,
share that because then
but
maybe
well, the
somebody
thing
might
with
see them.
I feel like with progression photos, it's hard to judge because if
Right.
they are in like a sex ring or in like child slavery kind of thing or whatever, they're not going to look like that. That's what they're going to look like if they're well taken care of, not malnourished and, homeless
Right.
or any of that kind of stuff,
Drugs. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So I think, yeah, they continuously, like every couple of years, they update those photos for the age progression, but I think it's hard to like really use those as well.
Have you guys ever done those age progression photos?
Mm-mm.
No.
I was also just thinking, has an age progression photo ever worked? Like, I feel like I've never heard a story where they did the age progression and it like
I did one on myself, or somebody did it on me. I don't know how it happened, but I looked identical to my Uncle Bob. So I assume that's exactly what I'm going to look like, because you could look at that picture and that's my Uncle Bob. So
I don't really need an age progression photo. I mean, you could literally look at the pictures. I know you could literally look at the pictures on the screen and figure out what I'm going to look like in 20 years.
You'll look like me.
Yeah.
So when I'm old and wrinkled and farty looking, that's what you look like.
Yep. Exactly.
Yay.
Yep. But that's all I have for this week.
all right. Good show. Very interesting. Anybody got anything they want to add?
And that was really for entertainment purposes only because it was mostly opinions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, because we really don't
Watching us
know
on
too much
YouTube,
information.
you can see that coming across the screen. Yeah.
Yep.
Anybody got any funny stories they want to tell us, or serious stories? Okay.
No.
Just trying to. Okay. All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Look forward to seeing you guys again next week. And everybody have a fantastic week, okay?
Bye.
Bye. Alexa played the Family School of Thought.